What's going on, guys? I wanted to get back into making my recap videos. So about probably 6 months or so ago, we were making recap videos talking about kind of the best trades of the day, even if it was that day or maybe a couple days before, just kind of going over the trades from those most recent trading days. Now, this example that I'm going to be using for today was actually a week ago. I've been a little bit busy, so this one's coming a bit late. But I do want to get back on track making these pretty much every single week. So look out for these recap videos probably every Tuesday. And if it's a very active week, we'll try to do them on Thursdays as well. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So this day I wanted to recap is the 14th. It's about a week ago from today. And the reason I wanted to go over this was about as perfect as you're going to get for those bear flags into VWAP. We had about 3 or 4, I think it was like 4 examples from that day, and pretty much every single one played out except for the last one, which we will talk about when we get there. But I wanted to go over basically what to look for with this trade, what is the setup, and kind of what you can use for your targets and what you can use for your stops. So if you guys have watched my videos, I've talked about this pattern quite a bit. It's the bear flag and the VWAP trade. There's also a bull flag in the VWAP trade that doesn't work as much. So you can almost take this setup and flip it to the buy side, but it's not as good. The bear flag one is a lot better. So basically what you're looking for is out of the gates, you want to be below VWAP, but you don't have to be. But out of the gate, you want to see a lot of sell pressure. Then you want to slowly push back into VWAP, and you want to be a seller around that VWAP. Now, I say you typically want to be below VWAP because you want your trade plan, you want your bias to be bearish. So think about like a lowercase b day or maybe a capital B day that is leaning to the sell side. But you want to have a bearish bias. You want to be looking for those sells. Excuse my throat, it's a little sore today. But you want to be looking for those sells for that setup. Obviously, it's a bear flag trade. So if you are leaning bearish, if you're looking for those sells and you see price selling off away from VWAP and then slowly pushing back into VWAP, you want to be a seller around that VWAP. Now, the more aggressive it is going into VWAP, the worse that trade will be. I call it a bad variation. So for example here, this first bear flag into VWAP trade out of the open, because it's right on that open, it is a worse variation. It's so aggressive going into VWAP there because typically around the open, the liquidity is a little bit lower, the volume is way higher, so you have that high volatility. So it's not a bad trade, it's just a worse trade than something like this, where it's very slow around VWAP. So you want to look to sell around VWAP, and what I mean by look to sell is you're not just like blindly putting your sell order as a limit on VWAP. Now, today's kind of an example, or the day that I'm going over, is an example of you could have done that and you probably would have still won the trade, but you need to be careful because sometimes it will do stuff like this, where it will just blow through VWAP, and you didn't really sit there and look, did we actually have sell pressure on that VWAP? Now, I can't show you in hindsight. It's very hard to show you after the fact, but we do talk about these during the live stream. So be sure to go back and watch the live stream from the 14th. If you can't find it on my YouTube because it's unlisted, go to my Twitter feed. I post my alerts going live every single day. Or if you're in Discord, just go to where I post the live streams every single day as well. But go back and watch that live stream and watch how that order flow comes in. Watch the tape, watch the delta, and how it's coming in when you're testing VWAP. And you basically want to see a lack of buying above VWAP, which obviously we saw in pretty much every example here, and you want to see strong sell pressure coming in when it's testing that VWAP or when it's kind of pushing away from that VWAP. So in this case, like around, let's say VWAP is 79, we want to see no buy pressure above 79, so nothing 80, 81, 82, and we want to see a lot of selling at 77, 78, 75 on the way down. Now, we don't want to wait too long because obviously the trade is just kind of dead at that point. So I'd say based on, there's a lot of variables, right? You can't put a hard number. You can't say it's always going to be a 5-point stop. It's always going to be a 5-point target, stuff like that. But based on the prior value kind of leading into that VWAP test, what is a reasonable stop? How many points do I need to put it above VWAP that will still protect me based on that recent value? So if we look at these prior highs here, they're going up to like 81. So if I traded VWAP here, I could put my stop probably around like 85 and be pretty comfortable. 85, 86, give it a couple of points, right? But you don't have to put it like 10 points away because the overall volatility recently, you're not showing massive breaks of VWAP. You're not showing massive breaks of these recent highs. You're not seeing a lot of bullish value up here. So you don't need to give yourself a lot of wiggle room on that. So give yourself a little bit of wiggle room so you don't get trapped, kind of like right here. We'll talk about that when we get there. But you'll break VWAP sometimes. It will give you a couple points, possibly trapping it, and then it will start to push down towards your target. Speaking of which, what is your target here? As I always say with bear flags in a VWAP, you always want to target the prior low. So what do I mean by prior low? I'm not talking about that exact low before you pushed into VWAP. I'm talking about if there's a cluster of candles. Here's a better example. If there's a cluster of candles that created that low leading into that VWAP bounce, think of that as like a node. That was the node that got created before it acted as support and then pushed into VWAP. So we want to target that prior low. We want to target that prior node. So in this case here, this is a very aggressive move into VWAP, which I said earlier is a bit more of a bad variation. It's not giving you an obvious target here. So you'd basically be using this kind of lower doji here. So that'd be anywhere from 60, which would be the aggressive target, because you're going for that actual low, or all the way up to 67, because that's the high of where that node would be. So it'd be more of the conservative target. So you can target the prior low on the high end, be more conservative, or on the low end, be more aggressive, and then your stop is above any prior support, prior resistance value. So any value that will protect your level, your stop. So in most cases, that'll be anywhere from 5, maybe 7 points above VWAP. And your entry, like we said earlier, you're watching as it tests VWAP. If there's not a lot of buy pressure coming in above VWAP, and there's a lot of sell pressure coming in below VWAP, then you can take that as your entry. You just want to do it so you're not so far away from VWAP where you can't put your stop above VWAP with a good amount of room to protect yourself from traps. For example, if I were to get in, let's say, like here, my stop would have to be pretty close to VWAP. It would have to be like there. And that doesn't protect me if we go for a break of VWAP, that little trap, right? But if I get in close to VWAP, let's say somewhere around here on VWAP, or like here, I could put my stop like way up here. And then if it starts to trap VWAP with a small break, that's not a big deal. Who cares? You're still protected, right? So give yourself enough room where you are protected from a trap of VWAP. So something like this would not stop you out. Okay. And then obviously your target is hit here. It goes for a new low. Now, one thing to watch out for is something that happened during this trade. It tried to put in a higher low. You want that move down from VWAP back to the prior low to be one smooth motion, kind of like this one was here. It was one smooth motion. You had a little bit of chop on the EMAs, but you stayed below that 80 EMA. You were protecting those candles highs, and you pushed all the way back down to that prior low. You don't want to see it start putting in like a higher low, like something like this or something like this, and then actually pushing back towards VWAP, where it's starting to break those highs and it's starting to push back towards your entry. You do not want to see that. If that starts happening, you have to ask yourself, do I have enough profit already to just go ahead and close the trade? If the answer is no, then just leave your stop loss where it is. Give it some wiggle room above VWAP, or if you really don't like the trade, maybe there was a headline that came out or something like that, you can tighten your stop loss to break even. So if that higher low does push back to VWAP, you're just going to get out break even. Now, like I said, that's if you really don't like the trade. But if you're still protecting those highs as you're pushing back down, then let it go and then target the prior low. Let's go over these next few examples. So this would be an example of where it's not very clean. It did break VWAP a little bit, but like I said, go back and watch that live stream so you can see exactly how those orders were coming in. There was not a lot of buy pressure coming in above VWAP here. You tried to close above VWAP, you pushed, came right back down. Pushed above VWAP, came right back down. So they were not building any kind of node above VWAP. Essentially, think about, is VWAP acting like a support? Is it actually holding prices higher? If the answer is no, then that's good for the bear flag in the VWAP. So the answer was definitely no here. It was not acting like support. It was not holding prices up. It was pushing them down. So then if the order flow looks good, you can take that entry, stop loss above the highs, make sure you have some value support. Support as in it's helping you, helping your stop loss stay protected. So in this case, it would be resistance. So make sure you have some a value node protecting you. So in this case, you'd be putting your stop loss probably like in this general area. So it's say entry around 67. So it could be a little bit worse. 64 could be a little bit higher, 69, 70. And then stop loss would be about 5 points, 75, 77, somewhere in that general area. Just make sure you have at least a 1.25 to 1.5 to your target. So in this case, the target would be on the conservative side, I'd say around 50, which from VWAP, that's about 17 points. And on the aggressive side, it'd be about 38. That'd be about 30 points away. So you're more than fine putting your stop loss 5-10 points away here, because that prior target is so far away. Okay? And then look for one smooth motion. Make sure it's protecting those EMAs bearishly. Make sure it's protecting the highs bearishly, and you are good to go. Okay, the next one I wanted to highlight here is in that VWAP zone. It's between the daily VWAP and the session VWAP, but it's not actually failing that session VWAP like to the tick. It's not actually testing that VWAP. Now, the things that we look for are still happening, right? We are still seeing a lack of buying above VWAP and good selling below VWAP. So you still have your criteria for an entry there, but you're not actually testing the actual VWAP. You're front running it. Okay. So if it stays above VWAP here, you're not looking for that trade, right? You're looking for it to act like support. But if it finds sellers below it and you start to lose that daily VWAP because the daily VWAP is below the session VWAP here, you could look for that as an entry. Same thing. Look for that prior low structure as your target. So this is a pretty decent cluster of candles here on that prior low, this whole cluster right here. So for the conservative target, the one that would get you out very early, that would be right there around 39. And the more aggressive one, looking for the bigger trade, would be around 26. Okay. And obviously you can use anything in the middle as well. I'm just giving you the extremes. Okay. And finally, one of the last examples I wanted to go over here was when we were front running VWAP, but then it turned into a higher low and it just broke right through. So this is what I was talking about earlier. You have to be careful when you start showing those higher lows and it's actually protecting those higher lows. It's pushing into those highs. In this example, let's say we would have shorted somewhere around here or somewhere even lower around the lower VWAP. Once it started putting in that higher low, right then you're kind of like, okay, let me pay attention. I'm not getting out of my trade right this second, but let me pay attention. Then it starts to use that higher low as support and you start launching off of it. Once again, it's hard to show you this in hindsight. You have to go back and watch the stream and see how that order flow was coming in. In this example, this would have been in the afternoon, so we would have been talking about that in Discord. But yeah, a lot of buy pressure coming in here with that closing spike, that kind of last hour buy pressure. And then you would have got stopped out break even or possibly for a small loss above VWAP. Okay. So look out for those higher lows. You did not get that prior low target unless you were targeting like something really conservative, like way higher than the actual prior low. But the prior low in my case here would be somewhere around 25, possibly around 31. So it bounced a little bit early there. But that is how you want to trade VWAP. You want to see how it's respecting VWAP. How aggressive is it into VWAP? Are they finding buyers above it, or are the sellers protecting it? Now, in this case, obviously, we're looking for the bear flag in the VWAP, so we're looking for those sells. If we flipped this, we do the same thing on the buy side. So for example, like if we were trading way up here and we started to come down into VWAP, are the sellers finding a node below VWAP? If the answer is no, are the buyers still protecting it as it's pushing away from VWAP? If the answer is yes, then obviously we can look for that bull flag into VWAP. Okay. But all right, guys, we're going to try to do these recaps at least once a week, every Tuesday. If it's very active, there's a lot of trade examples, we'll try to do them on Thursday as well. If you guys enjoy these recaps, hit that like button, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.